Masque de Masculine. Masque de Masculine, Masuku du Masakurin, is a Quincy and a member of the Wandenreika's Sternritter with the designation S, the Superstar. The Thousand-Year Blood War Arc. Upon receiving the orders of Yawatch, Masque and the other Sternritter gather at the Gate of the Sun before traveling to the Siriitii in order to participate in the conquest of Soul Society. Once there, Masque blocks 6th Division Lieutenant Rinji Aburai's attempts to attack as not. When his hand is severely cut by 6th Division Captain Byakuya Kachiki, Masque berates his ally, only to be knocked down by Byakuya. As the battle between Byakuya, and Rinji continues, Masque once again stops Rinji from attacking, this time damaging his Shirkai, when the lieutenant tries to activate his Bankai. Criticizing him for doing so, as states he could have stolen Rinji's Bankai. Masque is surprised, saying that he thought only captains had Bankai, and as tells him to review the daten they were given. Later, when Ichigo Kurosaki arrives in Soul Society, Masque is surprised when his Ryatsu abruptly vanishes. Later, Masque is present when Yawatch declares Yuryu Ishida to be his successor, surprising him. Afterwards, Masque, BG9, Sangdu and Bazb discuss the news, and Masque questions Bazb's request for an explanation. When Bazb leaps away, Masque asks him where he is going. When Bazb tells him he is going to Yawatch's chambers to protest, Masque tells him to stop and states Yawatch will not forgive Bazb if he does this. Later, during the Wandenreika's second invasion of the Siriitii, 11th Division 3rd Seat Ikaku Madarame, 11th Division 5th Seat Yumachika Ayasegawa, and 9th Division Lieutenant Shuhei Hisejai discuss the events surrounding the invasion, when Masque attacks them from above. After elbow-smashing Ikaku, Yumachika and Hisejai into the ground, Masque strikes a victory pose as a small man named James rings a bell. Noting they finished off almost all of the captain-level Shinigami they found, Masque proclaims it is sad to win without an audience. A light appears in the sky, and Masque wonders what it is as Rinji and 13th Division Lieutenant Rukia Kachiki enter the Siriitii. At James's recommendation, he attempts to rush to the landing zone to figure out what's going on. Hisejai tries to stop him, but is knocked down. As Masque attempts to stomp on Hisejai with his foot, 9th Division Captain Kensei Mugiruma appears and interrupts him. Masque tries to justify leaving the battle, but then realizes 3rd Division Captain Rojuro Odoribashi is also present. Masque realizes he has no choice and prepares to fight, but Kensei activates his Bankai and punches Masque in the stomach, forcing him down on his knees. Kensei delivers Masque another blow and sends him flying, crashing into a building. However, James cheers him on, activating his special ability, the Superstar, increasing his strength. Masque appears behind the two captains, smashing Kensei into a building and punching Rojuro away. When Kensei attempts to attack him from behind, Masque hits him in the abdomen with his Star Eagle kick before using Star Headbutt, which further wounds Kensei. When Kensei attempts to punch him, Masque catches Kensei's fist before slamming him into the ground. After smashing into Kensei, Masque sees Rose bifurcate James with Kinshra and demands to know how Rose could hurt a simple fan. Activating his Bankai, Kinshra Butadin, Rose seemingly surrounds Masque with water and sets him on fire. When Masque realizes these are illusions, Rose reveals his Bankai uses sound to trick his opponent into thinking they have been harmed, prompting Masque to crush his eardrums before firing his Star Flash at a stunned Rose, leaving a star-shaped hole in his abdomen. Upon noticing Rose twitching, Masque fires his Star Flash at him once more, only for Rinji to appear and block it with Zabumaru before stating he is another villain. After Rukia Kachiki takes Kensei and Rose away, Masque asks Rinji if he is not going to face him 2-on-1 before noting this is what Kensei and Rose did. When Rinji responds to him, Masque notes he cannot hear anything and realizes he crushed his eardrums before having James, who has survived his bifurcation, heal him by cheering for him once more. When Rinji states he is gross because of this, Masque attacks Rinji with his Star Rocket Headbutt, only for Rinji to stop him with one hand before knocking him into the ground with an elbow strike. Proclaiming this has made him angry, Masque shows Rinji a star mark on his fist and hits Rinji with his Star Rocket Punch while explaining how his punch is now 10 times more powerful. When Rinji catches his punch and notes he probably cannot kill a Shinigami, an enraged Masque punches him repeatedly, only to stop in surprise when James is cut into pieces. When a shocked Masque asks James why he is wounded, Rinji reveals he cut him into pieces while Masque was punching, prompting Masque to proclaim Rinji is a coward. Saying all villains are cowards, Rinji slices Masque across the abdomen. Saying that a star never can be killed by a villain, Masque squeezes himself back together after Rinji's blow. He then yells for James to cheer for him. out of every piece of James, a new James appears and cheers. Empowered by all the cheering fans, Mask takes on a new form. Stating that he remembers who Renji is now, Mask wonders how such a weak villain could have become so powerful. After saying what an honor it is for Renji to see his true power, Mask attacks Renji again. Mask sends Renji flying and activates his Quincy, Volstandig, and attacks him again. When Mask bids his adversary farewell, he sees that Renji has blocked his attack. Watching James die after being struck by the Star Flash supernova, Mask tells him not to worry as he will be reborn as long as Mask still lives. Renji emerges from the smoke, unveiling Suzabumaru, causing Mask to wonder how Bankai can change forms. He then says that Renji's Bankai looks formidable and, after realizing Renji could block his last attack with it, he is left with no choice but to kill Renji for the sake of justice. Mask rushes at Renji but is caught by Hihio, the giant baboon arm of Renji's Bankai. Mask attempts to break free of its grip, only for it to snap his arm and toss him into a nearby building. Enraged, Mask exclaims that their battle is no longer a matter of justice and evil, but that he merely wants Renji dead for breaking his arm. Renji then activates Orokyo and impales Mask with his new sword. Activating Zaga Teppo, a pair of enormous snake jaws clamp down on Mask, scorching him. Split in two by the attack, Mask's body then crumbles. Appearance: Mask has a very large, muscular build. He wears the standard Sternritter uniform, with the addition of a yellow and red-orange Lucador mask covering most of his head and face, leaving his chin and nose exposed. His mask has a star pattern on the forehead and thick markings around his eyes, nose, and cheeks. His boots and gloves are red. He has brown eyes and a blonde mustache. In addition, he wears a wrestler champion's belt with a large round buckle rather than the standard Wandenrake belt buckle. The buckle bears the Wandenrake insignia. Personality: Mask is a rather dull man. He had no idea that a Shinigami lieutenant could perform Bankai, believing only a captain was able to perform such a feat. He acts like a Lucador and has an attendant following him around with a wrestler's bell to declare when a match is over. He also strikes macho poses to proclaim his victory and wishes he had a live audience to witness his victory. Mask can react unhesitatingly to the situations at hand, piercing his own eardrums without hesitation to counter the ability of Rose's Bankai Kinchirobutadin. He cares very much about his friends and fans, and shows enormous rage when they are attacked because they were supporting him. However, that did not stop him from ignoring the fact that James, his fan, was within the blast radius of his Star Flash supernova as it blew him away in his attempt to kill Renji, arrogantly reminding him that as long as he breathes, James will continue to revive. Mask sees himself as a hero of justice while referring to his enemies as villains and cowards, and claims his motive is to eradicate the so-called evil and villains, bragging that any trick used by them would never work against him. He gets furious and abandons the pretense of fighting for justice when he suffers a major injury. Equipment: Sanrei Belt. Mask wears a belt with the buckle bearing the Wandenrake pentagram. Uniquely, this serves the same function as a Sanrei glove. Once released, this allows Mask to activate Quincy, Volstandig as long as he is not in possession of a Shinigami's Bankai. Powers and abilities: the Superstar, Za Supasuda, Japanese for hero. Mask gains a considerable amount of zeal, stamina, and strength when he has at least one other person cheering him on, enough to send 2 captain-level Shinigami flying with a single strike. He grows durable enough to become resistant to a repeated direct attack from Kensei's Bankai. The power also allows him to regenerate from damage, with James' cheers healing his damaged eardrums. After receiving enough cheering from James, Mask is able to power up to a new form in a process he calls Star Power-Up, Sudapawa Apu. In this powered-up state, Mask's mask changes to a black mask with a stylized black and red star pattern. Most of his clothes disappear as he is only wearing black gloves and boots, wrestler shorts and a champion's belt, with red stars covering his nipples. The center of his chest sports an exaggerated star-shaped patch of hair. This ability also links Mask supporters to him, allowing James to be revived infinitely so long as Mask himself lives. The power Mask receives from this ability allowed him to swiftly defeat 2 Bankai-wielding Shinigami captains. Star Flash, Suda Furashu putting his index and middle fingers to the points of the star on his mask. Mask fires a star-shaped beam which is powerful enough to easily pierce a captain-level opponent like Rojuro Odoribashi. Star Satsujin Punch, Suda Satsujin Panchi, lit. Star Murder Punch. When Mask is enraged, a star mark manifests on the back of his fist. While he has this mark, his punches become 10 times more powerful than usual, releasing star-shaped bursts of energy on impact. Mask refers to it as the Hammer of Justice. Star Lariat, Suda Rariato. Upon transforming due to James' empowering cheers, Mask can use this technique, which he claims can punch an opponent 1 mile away. As such, he claims the people call this technique 1 mile arts, Wanmairu Atsu. He is also able to use this technique in rapid succession to overwhelm opponents. Expert hand-to-hand combatant, Mask is highly proficient in unarmed combat, using it as his sole means of fighting. In battle, he frequently uses wrestling moves, such as dropkicks, elbow slams, and clotheslines. Additionally, Mask is proficient enough to have created his own unarmed fighting techniques. Star Eagle Kick, Suda Igurukiku. Mask delivers a devastating knee kick to his opponent. Star Headbutt, Suda Hedabato. Grabbing his opponent's head, Mask rams his forehead into theirs. Star Rocket Headbutt, Suda Roketo Hedabato. Mask propels himself towards his opponent and rams into them headfirst. The impact carries enough force to create a massive explosion. Star Dropkick, Suda Dorapukiku. Mask dropkicks his opponent with enough force to smash them through several buildings. Racier Manipulation, as a Quincy, he primarily absorbs spiritual energy from the atmosphere, and combines it with his own spiritual energy to form weapons. He has an easier time collecting this energy in environments with higher concentrations of Racier, such as in Soul Society or Hueco Mundo. Hirenkiaku Expert, Mask is deceptively fast for his size and build, repeatedly catching Renji off guard during their battle and leaving him very little time to react to his attacks. He grabbed Renji's Zabumaru and broke it just as he was about to activate his Bankai. Great Spiritual Power, Mask's spiritual power is on a level comparable to or greater than that of a captain-level Shinigami. Enhanced Strength, Mask has proven to be an incredibly strong man. When 6th Division Lieutenant Renji Abarai attempted to activate his Bankai, Mask grabbed Zabumaru and performed a dropkick which sent Renji flying across the Siriidii, broke Zabumaru into pieces and incapacitated the lieutenant. Enhanced Durability, Mask is a very durable man, grabbing Renji's released Zanpakuto without sustaining injury and emerging from the pit he fell into with only minor scratches. Quincy, Volstandig. After powering up from James' cheering, Mask can use the Quincy, Volstandig. The buckle on his belt glows and envelopes Mask in light. Upon emerging, Mask gains a star-shaped Heiligenschein above his head, small wings on his chest, and a cape that doubles as his Quincy, Volstandig wings. His patch of chest hair shrinks to resemble a more traditional star. Flight, using the cape/wings on his back, Mask can fly at high speeds. Star Flash, Supernova, Suda Furashu, Supernova. Mask flies high into the sky and traces out a giant pentagram shape using the Racier trail from his wings. Mask then flies above the pentagram and calls out the name of the attack, after which a massive star-shaped blast of energy crashes into the ground, creating an immense explosion upon impact. Subordinates. James, Jaimuzu, is a short, chubby, bespectacled bald man who follows Mask around during his battles in Soul Society, carrying a small bell around with him. James seems to have an immense amount of respect for Mask and enjoys cheering him on during his battles, as well as becoming immensely upset when Mask appeared to lose to Kensei Mugiruma. He also has a habit of referring to Mask as Mr. Masuda. His cheers act as a source to Mask's, the Superstar, ability, increasing all of his physical attributes as long as James continues to cheer him on. James is later bifurcated by 3rd Division Captain Rojuro Otaribashi in order to prevent his cheers from empowering Mask. After revealing he can still cheer even while bifurcated, James is quickly cut to pieces by Renji Abarai. However, James reveals he possesses amazing regeneration abilities by growing a new copy of himself from each piece of himself. So long as Mask is alive, James will eventually be reborn. However, with Mask's death at the hands of Renji, James is also dead. With his death, James's soul was absorbed by Yawatch. Powers and abilities. Immortality. As long as Mask is still alive, James is immortal and will remain active no matter how much damage or injury he suffers. Division. If cut into pieces, James can form copies of himself from the severed portions to rapidly increase the potency of his praise for Mask, allowing the latter to enter an empowered form in the process.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.